When a disaster strikes, how should a country respond? It's a huge question. Today, we're going to dive into a really high-stakes debate happening in Japan over a pretty radical idea. Should they create a brand new, centralized agency to handle all national emergencies?
So to really get what this is all about, you have to understand the context. Japan is, without a doubt, one of the most disaster-prone countries on the planet. We're talking a constant threat from massive earthquakes, powerful typhoons, and devastating rains. The stakes here are just incredibly high.
And that reality leads us right to the critical question at the heart of this whole explainer. What is the absolute best way to protect people and property when you know, for a fact, that disaster is coming?
Well, one proposed answer is to build a new, powerful disaster prevention agency from the ground up. But, as we're about to see, that idea is at the very center of a massive, and I mean fierce, national debate.
Okay, so let's start with the yes side. What's the case for creating this new agency? Well, the people who support it argue that for the kind of complex disasters we face today, you absolutely need a single, unified, central command.
The whole thinking here is that a single agency could basically kill 4 birds with one stone. First, it would unify what is now a pretty fragmented system, which means faster, clearer decisions. Second, it'd become a hub for integrating modern tech like AI and drones. And I know what you're thinking, this sounds really top-down, right? But proponents claim it would actually strengthen local communities by getting them better resources. And finally, it's all about cutting the enormous economic cost of these disasters.
And speaking of that economic damage, just look at this number, 2 trillion yen. That's the estimated loss from typhoons in just 1 year. It's a truly staggering amount of money.
And right here, this is the core of their economic argument. They say, look, even if this new, super-efficient agency could cut that damage by a mere 10%, that's a savings of 200 billion yen every single year. That alone, they argue, would more than justify the initial cost.
But as you can imagine, not everyone is sold on this idea. There's a big pushback. Opponents argue this new agency isn't just unnecessary, it could actually make things a lot worse.
Their argument is basically this. Why build a whole new house when you can just fix the one you're living in? They say the focus should be on improving the quality of the current system. They're worried about massive startup costs, way more bureaucracy, and the risk of creating even more confusion. But you know their biggest concern is that a powerful central command could totally undermine the local governments, the people who are actually on the front lines when disaster hits. And this quote, wow, it really gets to the heart of their entire philosophy. The problem's essence is not the number of organizations, but the quality of operation. In other words, it's not about how many agencies you have, it's about how well the ones you've got actually work together.
So you've got these two competing ideas, a massive structural overhaul versus steady operational improvement. Let's dig in and see how these two viewpoints really clash head-to-head.
So first up, you have the clash over efficiency. The pro-agency side says a central command will streamline everything, share information faster, and ultimately save lives. But the anti-agency side says, hold on, you're just creating a new layer of bureaucracy that will slow things down. They argue that simply improving the processes we already have is the truly efficient path. And then, of course, there's the money. One side is saying, let's make a big investment now because the long-term savings will be huge. The other side is firing back. That's a massive gamble with taxpayer money. It's much smarter to use our limited budgets on smaller, guaranteed improvements for local teams right now. It's a classic policy dilemma, really. And this one might be the biggest clash of all: local control. Does a powerful central agency support the local teams on the ground, or does it just slow them down with red tape? One side sees a helping hand offering resources and expertise. The other side sees a major threat to the speed and autonomy you need in a crisis.
Okay, so in the formal debate that our source material is based on, a panel of judges listened to all of these arguments. They had to weigh all the evidence from both sides and then make a choice.
And in the end, their verdict was pretty decisive. The arguments against creating a brand new agency were the ones that won the day.
So why did they win? Well, the judges really honed in on 3 key things. First, cost and efficiency. They were convinced that improving the current system was simply a more cost-effective and faster way to get results. Second, that risk of centralization. They felt the negative side did a better job highlighting the real-world dangers of undermining local control. And finally, on tech, they basically said, you don't need a whole new agency just to use drones and AI. You can do that right now within the existing framework.
So the debate itself had a clear winner. But let's be real, the underlying problem, the threat of disaster, that doesn't just go away. What this whole thing really shows us is a core dilemma that we all face when we're trying to prepare for the inevitable.
Because this isn't really just a policy discussion in Japan. It's about a fundamental choice between radical, top-to-bottom change versus slow, steady, incremental improvement. It's centralization versus local control. These are huge questions every government, every organization really has to wrestle with.
And that leaves us with this final thought to chew on. When you're staring down the next big crisis, what's the bigger risk? Sticking with a system that you know is flawed, or taking a huge gamble on a disruptive solution that might create a whole new set of problems you didn't see coming? There's just no easy answer to that one.